Hello and welcome to the Magic Mechanic Radio Show right here on WDBO. My name's Josh McCarthy with the microphone that says Josh on it, so I know where I belong. This is your chance to talk to Larry Perry, the Magic Mechanic himself. We are sitting here offering expert car advice. Any questions you may have, maybe something lit up on your dashboard, you don't know what it means, maybe one headlight is working but the other one's not working, and you want to figure out what the heck is going on. Larry Perry is standing by to answer your questions for the low, low price of free. Pick up the phone right now and dial 844-580-9326, 844-580-WDBO. We also love to utilize the open mic feature deep within the WDBO app. Again, that app is free in the App Store or Google Play Store, but open that up, click the open mic button, and talk away. How you doing today, Larry?
We're doing great. Been outside working.
Before the rain comes in.
Yeah, working up a sweat. It's actually pretty hot out there today. So, yeah, just enjoy your Saturday until the rain comes, as they say. Hey, folks, it's 3 o'clock, and I'm Larry Perry, and you're tuned in to the Magic Mechanic Radio Show. So, you new listeners know, well, this is an interactive automotive and mechanical advice program where we can help you with your car problems and just about anything mechanical. And it's been our pleasure to do so for almost 32 years now. Me personally, I'm an automotive shop owner, and I've been a master auto technician since 1982. To make the program work, well, we need your calls, and the lines are open at 844-580-9326. Now, the best way to remember the number, nobody can remember a phone number right off the bat. I don't even know why people get phone numbers out. You know what? It's just kind of crazy. Who's going to remember it? If you can remember the 844 part and the station that you're listening to, which is 580 WDBO, you know what? That's going to put you right through. The only thing you've got to do is, swap the numbers out for letters. So 844-580 WDBO. If you can remember that, which I can remember that, that's not that difficult. And that'll get you right straight on through. And remember, all your calls and your car questions, and this is another added bonus for the price you're paying for all these car answers, you get indexed on our new Magic Mechanic YouTube channel. So our conversation is going to always be on there. So folks, searching for answers like you will be able to get the same needed information, years from now. And folks will be able to play the car questions back anytime and hear our comments years from now. So we'll be around for a while, hopefully, and help a lot of folks just by you calling in and asking a car question. Dash warning lights, poor fuel economy, oil consumption, AC not working correctly, vibrations, warranty questions, antique and classic car issues. And we answer those questions on any gasoline, hybrid, electric, or diesel vehicle. Also remember, I have a complete database of all the listed recalls and technical service bulletins from 1980 to, pretty much current date. All you got to do is give us a call, 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. An easy way, like I said, is 844 and the station you're listening to, which is 580 WDBO. You're going to give our producer, Josh, the year, make, and model of your vehicle, a brief description of your problem, and you'll be placed on a brief hold, and we'll take your call in the order that it was received. And folks, if you need to get a hold of us at the shop, I'm going to go ahead and give you the number. If you don't get a hold of JD or one of the guys, that you'll probably get an answering machine. Just leave your number and they'll give you a holler back. 407-629-2661. We also want to mention the open mic option, which a lot of folks use. You can go to WDBO.com on your smartphone and you can download the app. And you can leave us an open mic car question. Just give us the year, make, and model, and a brief description of your issue you're having, and we'll get to those at the bottom of the 4 o'clock news break. And I do want to go ahead and add that, the WDBO.com app, this isn't something to aggravate the living devil out of you and send you a bunch of advertisement and things like this. What it really does is it gives you the ability, because it turns your phone into a severe weather radio, basically. So if you get severe weather or a tornado is in your location or something like that, your phone will automatically alert you. I know the National Weather Service has something similar to that, but I don't think they concentrate on specific areas like WDBO does. So they've got everything right to the minute, to the town, to the road that something may be taking place on. So, it's definitely worth the price of admission, as they say, at WDBO.com app, because it's absolutely free. So go ahead and hop on board and get that downloaded on your phone. I have, and I use it constantly. Now, you can also ask a car question by emailing me, larry@magicmechanic.com. I can't guarantee I'll get to all of the emails, but if I can't get to them during the show, if we can fit them in, we will. But if I can't, then we'll get them answered probably on Monday morning. All right, let's get to work. I've got my shirt sleeves rolled up, and let's see, we're going to start. Who were you starting the program off with today, Josh?
Let's kick it off with Sonny. Sonny was the first person to call. Sonny's calling from Eustis. Go ahead, Sonny.
Yes. So I have a 2017 F-150.
Okay.
And I have some electrical issues going on. I don't know if it's typical with this particular year and make and model. So I have charging system service now light on the dash.
Okay.
And I've replaced the battery, the alternator, and on the top of the negative ground terminal, there's a wiring harness that plugs in.
Mm-hmm.
That one of the wires feeds to like an AC line, and then the rest of them go to God only knows where. But I replaced that. But when I'm driving down the road, especially at nighttime, the headlights just flicker on and off, and sometimes they'll completely turn off, as well as the radio and the air conditioning system at the same time.
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions on what I should try to replace next?
This isn't one of those kind of problems. You're not. You better have a big checkbook if you're going to go and start doing this. I'm going to tell you, you've got a battery sensor system built into this vehicle. Now let me explain how this thing works. Most of it is actually integrated into the instrument cluster, believe it or not. And what it does is it senses, voltage loads, and that basically tells the alternator what its output's supposed to be. I'm going to tell you like this. Me personally, I've got a late model F-150 myself, and if I was having this problem that you're having, I'm not going to go and start buying instrument clusters for this thing. This could get out of hand really quick on a vehicle like this. We use what's called an IDS, and that's the Ford scanning software, to where we plug it into the vehicle, and we can sit there and monitor everything that there is in that system. It could be something expensive. I'm not going to lie to you. It could be an instrument cluster, could be a PCM. I mean, there's just a zillion things that can go wrong to cause problems. Similar to that. They could be a wiring harness issue. Who knows? But until you actually have the equipment on it to where you can really scan the system, Sonny, you'll be throwing darts at this thing. You already have. So this can get really expensive, and you can do a whole lot of needless replacing. And you got to remember too. Let's say it does need an instrument cluster. Well, the whole thing, it's all got to be flashed and programmed before it'll even work with the vehicle. So there's so much of this stuff nowadays that, you're a do-it-yourselfer. I commend you for that, but I'm going to tell you right now, and with this particular issue, you're going to need somebody to do the diagnostics on this, even if you go and try to fumble around with it and fix it yourself. If not, you're going to wind up in a big expensive mess. I'm just telling you. There's only so much I can do without the equipment. I'm just telling you. Otherwise, anybody, I don't care how good of a mechanic you are, you'll be doing nothing but guessing. That's all they'll be involved with. but you're going to need to have this professionally diagnosed, and the IDS with the Ford scan equipment. That's what's going to have to be done, Sonny. That way it can be pinpointed. We can find where the location of the problem is and then do hands-on circuit testing if we need to. But if at this point, like I said, sometimes, even a do-it-yourselfer's just got to take a deep breath and be at the mercy of somebody else. And I'm the same way. I hate to be dependent on anybody for anything. And, I just don't have that kind of patience, I'll fix it. That's all there is to it. But in this case, without the proper equipment, I don't know if anybody could diagnose it properly without it. Sonny, I appreciate your call, and I hope that sheds some light on what you're into here. And I hope it's something simple, and you can get it back on the road without it costing you too awful much money. We appreciate your call.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for taking it.
Thank you so much, Sonny. Let's head on up to the Villages where Barb's got a question about her Santa Fe. Go ahead, Barb.
Yes, hi.
Hey.
I have a problem with my car, heating and air.
Mm-hmm.
The blower is constantly breaking. The first one, it burned, so they replaced that, and now again they replaced it 2 days ago. And I don't know why this has happened, And my knob in the front, when you put, from 0 to 4, the input of the air, it's kind of working hard.
Okay. I guess, well, the thing is, Barb, I don't know if the knob, the actual switch that you're talking about, would really have anything to do with it or not. My guess is that, I don't know exactly if they're having problems with the blower motor resistor, which is what actually, dictates the fan speeds, or whether they're just bad blower motors, In most cases, a blower motor in a car here in Florida will probably last 10 years, because we use them a lot in the summertime. Of course, they're always running to keep the car cool. But, if there's no shorts or anything like that electrically, I would say, and I hate to say this, but it's probably just a few blower motors that are having this issue. Now, I'm going to tell you what you can do. Email me, Larry at magicmechanic.com. I don't have time to do this right now because we're getting ready to break for the three big things. But what I'd like for you to do is email me, Larry at magicmechanic.com, and let me pull up the technical service bulletins regarding the blower motor on this 2020 Santa Fe. This way we can find out, is it a problem? Are you the only one having this problem, or is it industry-wide? You see what I'm saying? If you've got a whole bunch of individuals out there with the same vehicle having the same problems, then it's probably just a whole bunch of lousy blower motors that some manufacturer is making for your Santa Fe. So, but email me. We'll see if we can't get you a little more information on why you're having this problem, Barb. And we appreciate your call.
All right.
Thank you.
So it's Larry at
magicmechanic.com.
Magic Mechanic. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Barb.
Larry, what do you say we head up to Orlando where Raymond's calling in?
Let's go.
Go ahead, Raymond.
Hey, Larry, how are you?
We're doing good.
Larry, I have already had two cars that you have replaced the airbags in for me. This particular car I'm talking about is a 2014 ATS.
Okay.
So it would be a different one that you had replaced before. And the other cars, the reason for the replacement is that I bought the cars rebuilt, and I wanted to make sure the airbags are okay, and then you guys went in there and tore them apart and found out they weren't okay and replaced them. This newest one that I've got, or the latest one that I have to be replaced, I was just curious as to, are we having the same type of supply problems that existed before with airbags?
Now, are we talking about the air ride suspension, or are we talking about the safety restraint airbags inside the vehicle?
Yeah, inside the vehicle, the safety restraint bags. They're, with that dash and the side ones and the,
Okay. Do you have an
airbags?
Raymond, do you have an airbag light on now?
What do you mean airbag light? I don't know what that is.
Is there an airbag, light illuminated on the dash?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
it is. I'm not using the car right now, but it is. It's one of my kids. So she's not driving it right now because she lives in New York and she doesn't need a car. So I was just curious as to when I bring it in, what would be the downtime waiting for to get airbags? Because I remember last time it was a pretty good while. It was like 4 or 6 months or something like that before we could actually get them.
Some of this stuff, Raymond. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if GM will ever make it again. I'm telling you, if they're at a certain age. And computers, we have to send all of our bad computers that we get. We're getting we're getting stuff in that's 3 and 4 years old, and GM doesn't have computers for them. So we're having to find people and sending these things to sometimes out of the country in order to get computers built for their vehicles to get them back on the road. Otherwise, the car is just worthless. It won't even run. So in this case here, I'd have to do some checking to see. But now, let me tell you, the good news is that I think on that Cadillac, everything is pretty much the same up through 16, which gives us a good area. So, if we need to, this is one of those things to where, an airbag, if that is the problem. See, there's control modules, there's impact sensors. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff cause light to come on other than the actual physical airbag itself. So it's got to be checked, and we have to diagnose that. But if it does need an airbag, an airbag lasts the life of a car unless it's been in an accident and deployed or something along those lines. And I understand the situation that you're in here with that. The vehicle's been in an accident. You don't know really the condition of the airbag restraint system. But the bottom line is, usually if I have to, Raymond, I can go and find those things used out of a salvage yard. We find one that's been hit in the side and totaled out, and and then you got to look at it like this. A lot of cars get totaled out because of airbag deployment, because the insurance companies don't want to spend the kind of money that it costs to replace them. And so you get into a situation like that, we find one that's been hit in the side or something like that, and the airbags haven't deployed. A lot of times we can get a used one. I have to do a little searching, to come up with it, but, we always have that option. And as, especially GM, as they've gotten to the point now where some of these parts are just so hard to get, or it takes so long to get them, we're at the mercy of a lot of the salvage yards now, because it's just they can't even get the parts to build the new cars with, let alone servicing parts for stuff that, is 6-7 years old. That's the last of their worries right now. They're not worried about you fixing your car. They're worried about building a new one so they can sell you another one. So, but that's kind of what we're up against, and hopefully they do have it. If they don't, like I said, I'll find it. I'll find it used if I need to. And I don't have a problem using a used airbag. You got to look at it like this. There's airbags in cars out here that are probably 25, 30 years old now. So, and I guarantee you they'll still function because they're made out of a fiber material as opposed to a rubber, which would deteriorate. So I wouldn't have a problem using the used one if we can't find a new one. Raymond, thanks for your call, buddy.
Thank you so much, Raymond. That opens up a line for your question to be answered by Larry Perry, the magic mechanic himself. Call right now, 844-580-9326 is how you get in touch with Larry Perry right now, live here answering your questions. Or if you want to go right to the shop, the number for Larry's shop is 407-629-2661. And Larry, I was actually in your shop just a couple weeks ago, and I asked JD, I said, JD, are you always fishing? And he said, 95% of the time, I'm fishing.
Yeah, he enjoys getting out on the Central Florida lakes, and you ought to see some of the pictures of the bass he catches. It's amazing. Hey, folks, listen, before we get to your calls, and geez, we got like one line open out of all these lines. So, but I need to mention this, why it's on my mind, because I don't have the question come up often enough. from like 2007 up until pretty much currently, Ford used a 3.5 V6 motor, and they also made a 3.7, earlier, and those are called Duratec engines, and they put them in a whole bunch of different vehicles. They put them in the Ford Edges. They put them in a lot of Ford Explorers have these engines. The Ford Flexes, some of the Fusions, and Ford Tauruses, they all use that 3.5 V6 engine. And the reason I'm trying to bring this up is they have internal water pumps that are actually driven off of the timing chain inside the engine. Now, these things go bad and they start leaking coolant right into your engine oil. And it will literally, you don't know you have a problem until it overheats. And by that time, the damage is usually done. And you're looking at replacing an engine, I mean, we're probably talking 10 grand or so to put a motor in one of those vehicles. Now, it's kind of like this, and I had a customer call me up, and they were from out of state, and they were out of state, and they had one that had overheated on them, and I guess it overheated pretty bad, and it was a 2017 Ford Explorer. And they said, Larry said, we were on the highway, and all of a sudden the temperature lights come on, the gauge is all the way over, and motor started making all kinds of crazy noise, so we had it towed it into a Ford dealer, and I think they told them that they needed an engine because of the water pump. And they gave them an estimate of it was almost $15,000. And I'm not talking about using a Ford motor, I'm talking about using a Jasper if you need one. But now this is where this gets good. I went ahead and I looked it up, what that vehicle was worth running. Well, I think this one had like 89,000 miles on it. The vehicle itself still has a book of around $20,000, in some cases, depending on how it's equipped, a little more than that. Do you know what that Ford dealer offered them for that car? $1,000. $1,000 for that Ford Explorer. And I'm sitting there going, well, I'm like, well, if they buy it, technically retail for them to fix it, they're going to have 15 grand in a car, before they could actually be able to turn around and retail it back out. But folks, listen, if you replace the water pump in those engines proactively, and if the car's got, close to 100,000 miles on it or whatever, go ahead and do the timing chain and stuff in it at the same time. You're probably going to spend $2,400, but it's going to make it bulletproof for the next 100, pretty much for the next 100,000 mile, or at least another, 8-10 years. But if you don't do it, you're going to lose a motor. It's just point blank, and after dealing with that this week, it broke my heart, and he knew about it. He knew about the water pump. That's what was really the bad part. He goes, I had it in my mind, Larry, to get this thing done sometime, this year. But he goes, I put it off. I got busy, never thought anything about it. But you go and you look out here, how many Ford Explorers, especially, they are out here on the road. There's thousands and thousands of them. And a lot of these folks, they don't know they're dealing with a time bomb. Them water pumps, when they go bad, they'll literally fill the engine full of all the coolant that's in the cooling system. And then when it mixes with the oil, it almost becomes abrasive and literally just starts eating the engine alive. So, if you know somebody that's got a vehicle like that, tell them to look it up on Google, water pump failure Explorer. Now, this is only for the V6s. The 4-cylinders does not have this issue. They use an external water pump on them. So if your vehicle uses a 4-cylinder, don't worry about it. But if it is the V6, you better worry about it. Could you imagine a vehicle worth 20 grand one day and $1,000 the next over losing an engine? That's the reason this is so important for people to understand. There's only so much I can do, and that's try to make it publicly aware. They're not going to send you a warning in the mail. This might be the only one you get. So heed my advice. All right, let's get back to the calls. Who are we going to start off with here, Josh?
We're going to start out with Ashley. She's got a 4Runner with a light issue. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hey there.
Hey.
So, yeah, it's a 2024 Runner. We took it in because it had some squeaky brakes to the Toyota dealership.
Mm-hmm.
And upon getting it back, we had this light sensor that would come on the dashboard, the anti-collision sensor. So whenever that disables, the sensor comes on, and then we can't use our cruise control or anything. We've taken it back several times. It'll be okay for a few days, and then it pops on again randomly. If it rains, if some bugs hit the windshield or down where the sensors are, if I hit a pothole, it'll click back on, and then it just will be on for a bit, and then it'll turn itself off. So I'm just curious if this is something you've heard about with 2024 Runners, or if you have any insight into what the issue could be.
Ashley, I'm going to be honest with you. I will have to research this to get you some more information. And like I told a caller earlier, email me this at larry@magicmechanic.com, and let me go ahead and pull up technical service bulletins and any recalls and see what the, generally other owners of that vehicle are dealing with. Now, what your problem is the radar system on this vehicle. Were you having the problem with this before you took it in to have the brakes worked on?
No. We were not, no. And when we got it back and we noticed it, they said that we must have bumped something in the garage upon parking it at some point for this radar system to get knocked off. But
if you didn't have the problem before, I agree with you 100%. Now, listen, let me just tell you how important this is to get it rectified, especially while this vehicle is under warranty. Folks, those radar systems for these adaptive cruise control systems and driver alert systems and everything else, those radars, they're about $4,000. So, when a car gets into a front end accident, think about that. Okay, when an insurance company comes along and they start estimating out, okay, we got $6,000 worth of interior and airbags, and then they got a $4,000 radar system in the front of the vehicle, and they haven't even started dealing with any accident damage yet, physical body damage. That's the reason that they totaling cars out left and right. It's just because these parts have gotten so daggone expensive and crazy. So, in a case like this, you're going to have to stay on them until it does get resolved. But in this particular case, just explain to them you did not have this issue before, and besides that, it's still under warranty. So, in this particular case, just jump up and down on somebody's desk until they listen to you. And get it back into the dealership and make them, most likely, whenever they raise the vehicle up, who knows why or how or anything else when they were looking at the brakes, but something got bumped or distorted. There is a recalibration for those radar systems, and that's most likely all it is. And if you need somebody to recalibrate it, I do have a gentleman that has the equipment to recalibrate that may be remote. He may be able to even come to your home. So email me the information, and if it is something that they did, he can surely tell you that too, and have them take care of it. But email it to me. Let me do some research on it, and then I'll get back with you. In the meantime, well, I guess you'll just have to use your gas pedal and no cruise control for a while. I appreciate your call. I hope I helped you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That opens up a line for someone else to call. We're going to take a quick break. 844-580-9326. 844-580-WDBO. We're about 50 minutes away from our open mic segment. Download the free WDBO app and send us your question via an open mic. What do you say we go back to the phones, Larry? Let's head on over to Apopka, where Michael's calling in about his Mercedes. Go ahead, Michael. Michael?
Yes.
Go ahead. You're on with the Magic Mechanic himself.
Hey, Larry.
Go ahead, Michael. What you got going on?
I have a 2019 Mercedes Sprinter, and the rear cam, the backup camera quit working. Wasn't sure if it was the camera itself, or maybe something going on in the dash.
Yeah. Actually, what what can be done is we can usually put a scan tool on those, Michael, and we can actually see if it is a problem with the camera or if it's an issue with the the entertainment system, your actual monitor. In most cases, if everything else is working on the display, usually in most cases, if all your audio and everything else is working correctly and it's illuminating properly, and you're just not getting any backup camera, usually is this a motorhome application?
No, it's just a cargo version.
Okay, all right. A lot of times whenever those things are routed, the actual cables going back to the rear camera, a lot of times in those vehicles, the way that they're routed, sometimes they'll get, cut or rub up against something, and then the next thing you know, they quit working. But in this particular, in the cabling itself running back to it, because they have to run it through the vehicle. In your case, I would have it scanned. The scan tool is going to be able to pretty much tell you the circuits that are actually working in the infotainment system, and if there is a missing feed going into it or whatever. But most likely, it's probably just a bad camera. So we replace those all the time. But if we can help you, give us a call. We'll have you come in and we'll scan it and see what's going on with it, and then go from there with it. I appreciate your call.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you so much, Michael. Let's head on over to Lake Alfred, where Jeff is on the air. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing, Larry?
Good, man. Good.
I've got a 2016 Denali. It's got a 6.2 gas motor.
Yeah.
And I don't have any issues with it now, but what I'm asking, if it's not under a load or whatever, it drops 4 of the cylinders off.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the motor. I love the truck. It gets 23 miles to a gallon on the highway. It's unbelievable. But I've had a couple of people say that they've had issues with them, with the lifters and things. Is there any way to disable that?
On a truck like that, does it come with a towing? Do you have a receptacle on the back of the vehicle for towing?
Yes, and then it has a tow option that I use when I pull my boat, which, of course, that drops it down to about 12 miles to the gallon when I'm towing my boat.
But what I'm saying is, see, it'll recognize if you plug in if you just plug the actual plug, not the boat harness, not the trailer harness, but if you just put the plug into the back of it, that'll usually disable the multiple cylinder displacement system.
Okay.
If you do that, then you're going to cut off. You're going to cycle off your torque converter clutch. You see what I'm saying? Because you're going to be dropping on the transmission if you go into tow mode. If you just plug it in, as long as there's something plugged into the receptacle, in most cases it will automatically disable the cylinder system, so it won't actually drop into the 4 cylinders. I'll tell you a funny story. I had went and got a C8 Corvette, the new mid-engine one. And I tell people this story all the time. I say, this is really kind of funny. I mean, you think about a vehicle that'll 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, a very, very fast car, and it's also a 6.2-liter engine. Now, when you're out on the road, if you're not in, race mode or anything with the vehicle, and you're cruising, you can actually, that vehicle will go into a 4-cylinder mode, and in that car you can't even tell when it does it. It'll just illuminate on the dash that it's in a 4-cylinder mode, and then you can look at the fuel burn on this thing. Do you know that car I don't know how accurate it is because my foot's usually into it more than this, but when that thing is in that 4-cylinder mode, that car is getting like 34 miles to the gallon. Can you imagine a Corvette getting 34 miles to the gallon, but yet we'll do 0 to 60 in, a little over 2.5 seconds. It's hilarious when you really think about it. So I guess technology is kind of good for a few things, right? But in your car, in your case, there's also some aftermarket programmers, Jeff, if you wanted to look into that as well, that will actually disable that system as well. But if it's working good and you're not really having any problems with it, the later model ones, as long as you're running really good oil, and when I say good oil, everybody knows what I mean. I'm talking about AMSOIL. We don't really have any problems with those lifters, if you run good oil. So the earlier ones from 07 to probably 2012, oh man, when we replace those engines, we literally deactivate the system completely. Camshaft, lifters, everything. So that way you don't even have to go through with it because the lifters that you got for them back then were just so lousy. But on these newer ones, it being a 16, we don't have that many problems with them if you run the good oil. And the ones that you hear people talking about are usually the older ones. So enjoy your gas mileage.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That opens up a line for you. Call 844-580.
Folks, with today's engine technology, are fuel injected, computer controlled, well, not only does it apply to cars, trucks, vans, RVs, and pretty much anything from 1985 on, it also applies to marine engines too. So if you got any marine engine questions, no starts, broken timing belts, overheat issues, anything along those lines with your boats, make sure you go and you post those questions and email me, Larry at magicmechanic.com. And don't forget about the Magic Mechanic Radio Show every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. on WDBO.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel and make sure you leave your comments.
9326-844-580 WDBO, or send us an open mic in the WDBO app. Larry, how you doing today?
We're doing fantastic. Hey, folks, we do have a couple open lines, so if you want to hop on board, go ahead and give us a ring, 844-580-9326. Easy way to remember, 844-580-WDBO. Hey, welcome to the second hour of the Magic Mechanic Radio Show. It's a show where you call in, you ask your automotive questions, and you can't beat the price because it's free. That number is 844-580-WDBO. Also, we take your automotive questions and my comments, and we place them on our new YouTube channel so other folks can maybe find the same help you seek. Plus, you can play it back anytime you want. That number again is 844-580-WDBO. And if you need to give a call to the shop, like I said, I don't know if JD's fishing today or not, but if he isn't, he'd be more than glad to take your call. 407-629-2661. Folks, our sponsors are very important to the show. We all pitch in to bring you the program every week. So if you enjoy it, please patronize our sponsors and tell them you heard about them here on the Magic Mechanic Radio Show. Orlando Auto Upholstery, interiors, convertible tops, carpets, seats, door panels, anything upholstery related. They are fantastic. You can visit them at orlandoautoupholstery.com. Number's 407-898-2351. AMSOIL synthetic lubricants for your car, truck, van, SUV, boat, motorcycle, bulldozer, lawn equipment, you name it, AMSOIL makes a lubricant for it. Folks, these are polyalpha olefin base stocks that are they're made out of basically irradiated plastic, and then they use another additive called ester. And what that does is it gives AMSOIL the unique ability to run to heat and friction and stay with a particular component, prevent the wear, so it actually works backwards of most oils that are on the market. Wouldn't you rather have an oil that ran to heat and friction to prevent wear as opposed to an oil that, encounters heat and friction and runs away from it? It wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for the sole purpose of it being pumped by an oil pump. But AMSOIL, even though it's being pumped, it's still going to stay on any heat and friction inside the motor. Don't believe me? Get your oil changed. You have to check the oil when it is cold only. If you try to check it when it's hot, you know what you wind up with? It'll show you your quart low, literally. because there's that much oil still hanging on to heated surfaces inside your engine until the oil gets cold. Then it will release and run into the oil pan. We used to have to put labels on dipsticks to let people know if you check your oil hot, it says right on the dipstick, allow 1 quart for hang-up inside your engine. But you would never use a decal like that for any other oil. Think about it. That would be unheard of because the oils don't look like that, don't work like that. Think about it. Your old cars, your grandfathers and your fathers and stuff. Well, they used to take an old car out and run it and get it good and hot, so the oil would run out of the oil pan. So it literally AMSOIL works backwards. Use it right after you break the engine in, first 5,000 mile. You buy a used car, you want it to last a long time. You want to preserve whatever you've already got. Put AMSOIL in it. It's a real fountain of youth for an automobile, or anything mechanical. Molten metal can still break. That's just part of life. Molten metal, something casted out of metal, can break. Oil ain't going to have anything to do with that. It'd break if it was bad, and regardless of what oil's in it. But as far as preventing wear in an engine or a transmission, AMSOIL is the only thing that I know of, the only magic elixir that really works. It was the first synthetic oil that was ever manufactured for the use in an automobile. And all these other hydro-cracked and wannabe synthetics have all come after it. But AMSOIL's original formulas, they worked incredible. The synthetic oils were originally designed for aircraft jet engines, because they lost so many turbines trying to use, just regular petroleum oils. It turned to sludge. They'd lose engine after engine after engine. But once they developed synthetic oils, they could keep a jet engine flying almost indefinitely. And they took that same technology and done some work in some laboratories, and they finally re-engineered it to where they could actually use it in an internal combustion engine as well. And that's how AMSOIL come to be. So if you got a vehicle like that, that you want to keep around a long time, AMSOIL costs a little bit more. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you're using it, most cases we recommend a year, 15,000 mile. If you take into account how long you can use it, and the benefit of not wearing your motor out, the bottom line is it's probably the cheapest oil on the market on the planet. So keep that in mind. If you got any more questions about AMSOIL, you can go to AMSOIL.com. Jasper Engines and Transmissions. If it comes time that you need to replace an engine or transmission, whether it be in a family car, your pickup truck, or a fleet, and you just want to repower the fleet as opposed to replacing them, which can be done for about half price, consider using Jasper products. That's pretty much our primary engine and transmission supplier, not because they're the cheapest, but because their warranties are impenetrable. You're going to get a 100,000-mile nationwide warranty on every component that we replace with a Jasper engine or transmission. They stand behind their products, no matter where you're at. We can install one. You can have a problem with it in Seattle, Washington. And the bottom line is they're going to send you to one of their installers, and it's going to be taken care of, and it's not going to cost you 1 penny out of pocket, not even for the oil that they have to replace when they do it. So keep that in mind. If you're going to spend a lot of money on something like that, you better make it count. Don't use something to where you have a problem and then all you get is a great big maybe and I hope, and keep your fingers crossed. You will not encounter that with a Jasper engine or transmission. It's an investment. It's not taking a chance. And, of course, last but not least, the Magic Mechanic Auto Service Center located in Orlando, Florida. Engines, transmissions, brakes, suspension, steering, electrical repairs, and, of course, AMSOIL synthetic lubricants. You can visit us at magicmechanic.com. Email me directly, larry@magicmechanic.com. Let's go to Cecil in Orlando. He's got a topic I need to address here. You with us, Cecil?
Yes. Thank you for taking my call, Larry.
No problem.
I think everybody that's listening to the show, they understand the advantages of using the AMSOIL oil, but there's quite a lot of difference between the different brands and price ranges of oil filters. I'd like you to explain the differences and what's a good one and what's not, maybe not so good.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, when I seen your question, the first thing I did, because I wanted to see just how much information, how easy it was to obtain information on the internet about oil filters. And what I typed in was, which oil filters use paper end caps? That is a very important question whenever you go to replacing an oil filter on your vehicle during an oil change. And the average consumer that goes through a quick lube really needs to know what kind of oil filter they're using on their vehicle. The Fram has used paper end caps on their filter media for years. And underneath that paper filter media, they use a piece of bent metal that's supposed to bend if that filter was become restricted or obstructed. And I'm like, well, that's about as primitive, I guess, as you could ever make an oil filter. You can't see what's inside of them because it's just a metal can, basically. And we're taking some manufacturer's word for how good of a quality that filter is. The problem with the way that, from a mechanical aspect, I'm not talking from an engineering aspect. I'm not going to sit here and try to butt heads with an engineer from Fram oil filters, or Purolator, or any of them. But the bottom line is we have cut many of those types of filters apart, and the paper end caps are blown right out of the bottom of them. I don't know whether it was because of overpressure or just that the paper itself actually deteriorates. And the bypass spring inside of them, or that piece of bent metal that's supposed to be a bypass, I'd never really understood the whole principle of that. And I've cut thousands of oil filters apart because I have to. If I get an engine failure in, I got to cut the filter apart to see what type of metal it's containing. So you go and you take a filter like a Wix filter. You cut them apart, nice paper micron filter, got metal end caps on it, and they use a high-tech silicone seals inside of them. So no matter how old the filter gets, the rubber seals inside the filter don't deteriorate. Whereas if you use a cheap rubber seal inside of it, just any type of rubber, it will deteriorate. It gets hard and brittle, and it will come apart, and it'll actually let the filter bypass. As far as the bypass spring in these filters like a Wix filter or a Napa filter, which Wix makes them for Napa, they got metal end caps, and then they use a real live, honest-to-goodness spring underneath them. So if that filter was to ever become restricted, it would just push down on the spring and bypass, so therefore you don't have, things in there that have to bend and move to bypass if the filter was to become restricted. I just, Fram defends these paper end caps as supposed to be the best thing in the world, and we all know why they use them. It's because of the cost of building the filter. It's cheaper, for goodness sakes. They don't have to buy as much metal, and they don't have to buy any springs. I guess they can just use spare pieces of metal laying around and bend them and call it a bypass valve. But your best bet is to in my opinion, I'm a mechanic. I always have been, and I've got a pretty mechanical engineering mind as well. But an oil filter with metal end caps and a real spring is a definite advantage. You can type in which oil filters use paper end caps, and there's all kinds of stuff here, and you can read it and you can make up your own mind. Bob is the oil guy. He's done some extensive research on this as well. You can also look and see what he has to say about it, but common sense tells me one that's made out of metal and uses a real live spring for a bypass, it makes sense. It makes common sense, but you can't tell some of these other oil filter manufacturers that and make any sense. So do your own homework, and I appreciate your call, Cecil. We're going to break for the three big things. When we get back, we got Patrick, Mike, Gary, Ken, Ryan. You've been holding on a long time. We're going to get to all of you here in just a couple minutes.
WDBO. We're talking to Mike right now. Mike's got something going on with his 2019 Ford Ranger. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for taking the call. And I found you back in the mid-'90s, and I've been listening ever since. My question is now my truck's about 3 a little over 3 years old now, and I know you usually say that you usually get about 3 years out of a battery in Florida. And I've also noticed that if I'm listening to the radio with the ignition switch in the accessory position, after about 10 to 15 minutes, I get a warning saying shutting the system off because of low battery. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's time to start thinking about another new battery. And I know you used to recommend the Interstate, and I think it was also the Napa batteries, but I wanted to double check that. And my last point on this is anybody start to use the lithium batteries instead of the lead acid batteries?
The closest that we have for those types of batteries are your what they call your matte batteries. They're glass matte batteries. They do a real good job, and I would probably prefer to have them as I would a lithium in that case. See, the lithium battery for an electric car, it can store a large amount of voltage, and it can displace it easily. The thing is when you're dealing with something like an alternator, it really, I don't think the two would really coincide. I think you would have electrical problems if you were to try to run a 12-volt system off of a lithium battery. It would be interesting. I have never done that, but it would be interesting to see what happens and how an alternator would react to it. As far as the quality of a battery goes, and like I said, folks, this is my opinion when it comes to a lot of this stuff. We used to sell Interstate batteries, and something happened, seemed like quality-wise to them. Whenever at one point they went, usually it was automotive shops. That's all there was as far as who carried an Interstate battery. If you were in an automotive shop, they typically wouldn't stock an Interstate battery. And they were really good batteries for many, many years. And then they went and they started wholesaling them out at Costco, and they were selling them for less money than an automotive shop. And we asked them, what's the difference? Oh, it's a complete different battery. And I said, well, what if somebody has a failure with one of them and they bring it back to us for warranty purposes? And they said, oh, you can't take back a Costco battery. And I said, well, why is that? He goes, well, they're downline batteries. I'm like, so wait a minute. You're selling a cheap version of a battery that the automotive shops are selling that basically built the brand name and the dependability factor of Interstate. And the answer was yes. I'm like, okay, now this is going to be real interesting. So you're going to sell junk batteries, and we're going to have people coming back to us that we can't help because they have to go back to Costco. Well, you can imagine just how long that took. I made my mind up rather quickly at that point. And, as you've heard me mention in the past, a Napa battery, they're Napa Legend Series batteries. They're made by Deca, and those are some of the last hand-built batteries they are in the United States, and they are very, very good batteries. It's the only thing I'll put in a boat because I can get 3-4 years out of them in a boat as opposed to maybe 1 year in any other application. And you just learn over time. It just the Legend batteries, especially their marine batteries, they're the best freaking batteries I think there is, and they're great in automotive applications as well. Now, the AC Delco batteries, which is what we stock at the shop now, those are really good batteries. The failure rate is almost none. I mean, in a 4 or 5 year period, those batteries last a long time. So AC Delco and Napa batteries, and Napa does not sponsor this show like they did years ago. And so I'm just telling you, no, I don't have anything at stake with this. I'm just telling you, an AC Delco or a Napa battery would be at the top of my list.
Thank you so much, Mike. That opens up a line for you to talk to Larry out of this break. 844-580-9326. 844-580-WDBO. What do you say we get to work, Larry?
Let's go to work.
All right,
Hey, Larry, Mark. I've always been able to figure out stuff. I've been on the planet for quite a few years, and I'm usually pretty capable. I've been thinking about these internal water pumps And I was wondering, there must be a way to seal that thing in there or remove it and cover some ports or something and put an external water pump on these darn engines. Is there a way to do that?
Well, yes, there is, but you may run into another problem. See, they use pretty much the same engine block in the F-150s that uses a external water pump. And the problem that you run into, the EcoBoost 3.5 motors, which I think they're awesome engines, the thing is they use an external pump because they can. They have room for it. See, on those 3.5s they use in the front-wheel drive applications, like on the Explorers and Tauruses and everything else, those engines don't have room for an external water pump. Now could a person take that thing all apart, put a block-off plate on that area where that water pump goes? Why, absolutely. You just get you a plate for the F-150s, put it inside there, and hook it up. But, where are you going to, unless you just go into the lower radiator hose, if there's room, and put in an electric water pump, that would be about your only other alternative. I never thought about that, but I guess it could be done if you have room for it. But it would have to be an electric water pump that would go into the lower radiator hose in order for it to actually work and circulate the coolant properly. So, yeah, interesting concept. But yeah, there's not a way. And as far as going inside there and fixing it to where the coolant couldn't leak out of it, well, see, this is the problem. You've got seals on the shaft that the timing chain is actually turning on the water pump gear. But see, when the bearings start going bad in the water pump and the shaft is no longer stabilized, well, the coolant's going to go somewhere, and it's going to wind up in the crankcase. It's just one of those things to where, if you don't replace the water pump on those 3.5 motors before they go bad, let your imagination run wild, because it's going to dump all the coolant right straight into the engine. You could seal all the holes you wanted to and everything, and it wouldn't make no difference, because once the shaft gets loose, the seals inside of it can no longer seal the coolant. So it's going to wind up inside the engine. I appreciate the open mic, and it gave me something to think about anyway. Block off the water pump and maybe put an electric water pump on it. But then you run into a whole new set of ideas, Will the alternator be able to support the battery well enough and, to run the electric water pump? How much of a draw would they be on the electrical system? So you're getting to an engineering aspect, which I love the thought of. But, it sounds like a little bit of work. But so is replacing the water pump on these and doing timing chain services. Thanks for your open mic.
Ryan is calling from Jacksonville. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, Larry, how are you?
We're doing good.
I appreciate you taking my call. I got a early morning phone call from my daughter who took her 2011 Jeep Wrangler up to Maggie Valley in North Carolina, and they struggled to get up the mountain and got there, fortunately, and now she's stuck, and I'm trying to figure out what could be the culprit. She said that the vehicle was shuddering on her, and I've had Jeeps since mid-'90s, and I'm concerned maybe the torque converter has gone out. What are your thoughts?
Well, if she was telling you it was kind of shuddering or whatever, that sounds more to me like an engine misfire, something along those lines. Did she say if it was making any noises or anything?
No, she's very attuned. I've mechanically spent a lot of time myself, and then educated her. No noises. But just a loss of power, and then some shuddering as they had some steep inclines to get to where they were going. And so I've set up, roadside has come and picked the car up and taken it to the nearest dealership because there's not much out there. And unfortunately, I'm not around. So anyway, it's been towed, and I'm just trying to figure out what I may be getting into.
Well, it could be a transmission issue of some sort, torque converter, whatever. This is, if the transmission is okay and it's just really down on power and not running correctly, going to have to find out how the engine itself is running, whether it's got a coil going bad, something along those lines. Those don't like to run on 5 cylinders very good. It could have a plugged up exhaust system. The catalytic converter could have come apart. We see that all the time. And if the catalytic converter's coming apart, then what happens is it plugs up the exhaust where the car won't go. The other thing I would do is run a fuel pressure test on it. Make sure that I've got the proper fuel pressure at the injector rail. Those are the types of things that's going to need to be done to diagnose why you've got the problem. Now, listen, we don't know anything about this dealership that you took this thing to other than there's a Jeep sign in the front of it. And everybody automatically is going to assume that these are experts. Well, your worst mechanic in that service department is he's liable to be the one who gets the ticket. But you've been around the block a few times. You know what to look out for. In the meantime, while you're waiting to get a little diagnostic work done and get a report back on this thing, just for the heck of it, look around a little bit. Go online and put in like Napa Car Care. These are independently owned auto service centers, and just look for the closest one in your area. When just to have as a backup is what I'm telling you. You're not there. You're going to have to depend on somebody else to give you some honest answers. And if they come back, telling you it needs a computer and a transmission and a engine overhaul, and they may not know what they're doing. At least at an independent Napa Car Care Center, find something like that, or an AC Delco Car Care Center. These are independently owned people that that's probably been in business for 30 plus years. They know what they're doing. They've got techs there they've been through the ringer. They can diagnose it and probably give you a lot more information, and it'd probably be a lot more pleasurable to deal with. But keep that in mind. Like I said, we don't know anything about this dealer and their service department. It could be a nightmare. You may have one guy in there that does a wonderful job for you. So it's kind of hit and miss. You don't know what you're getting into. But checking the exhaust system for restriction and having a fuel pressure test done on it, and scanning it to see if there is any misfire codes in it, like something that could be, ignition related. Those are all things that has to be looked at. That engine has some other issues, but if it was, rocker arms or something like that, she would have told you there's a ticking noise or something like that. But if she's not encountering anything like that, fuel pressure, check the exhaust for restriction, and tune-up condition. Does it have a bunch of misfire codes, in the computer system? But those are the 3 things that you need to be on the outlook for. If you run into anything that you're not sure of, just Larry at magicmechanic.com, and I will take whatever they're telling you into consideration to see if they're in the right ballpark or not. Just kind of relay with me what they tell you, and don't make any commitments financially on anything until you email or call me at the shop. Just unless it's just very, very explanatory, okay, this was wrong, or this was leaking, or this was broke, and you feel comfortable with that. Or if they tell you, hey, the exhaust system's plugged up, it needs a converter, it's that simple. If that's the case, then so be it. But if it's anything or multiple things or anything along those lines, just run it past me. It ain't gonna cost you a dime to email Larry at magicmechanic.com. I hope it works out great for you, Ryan. Thanks for the call.
Has someone standing by to give you a call back. If they can't answer right now, they'll call you back as soon as they can. 407-629-2661. That's 407-629-2661. But Patrick has been waiting patiently to hop on with Larry. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I have a 2011 Ford Fiesta. Having some issues with the radio in it. Apparently, it just all of a sudden goes away. I actually had one replaced with a rebuilt one for that particular vehicle, and within about 2 to 3 months, it also stopped working. Just before it stopped working, it made a loud pop, and it's never worked since.
Does the radio come on? I mean, does it illuminate and come on?
Yes, it does.
Okay. A lot of times, Patrick, what happens is it won't be the radio. See, everything coming out of that, display head is basically running through an amplifier, and that's what feeds the speakers in the car. And if the amplifier goes bad, then, of course, you won't get any sound. And for this to be as repetitive, you take one out doing the same thing, you put another one in, and then you got another issue with it, then my guess would be that you probably got an amplifier that is failing on it and has finally died, and that's the reason you're not getting any sound out of the system now. But if it's coming on, I'm assuming that the radio itself is probably working. It's just it's not able to transmit the sound through the speakers like it's supposed to. I guess a person would have to go to the amplifier itself and probably find out there if there is proper power going to it. Is it grounded? And if there's anything any output out of the amplifier itself. But most likely that's probably what you're going to be dealing with. Keep in mind that if that stuff isn't available at your dealer, which it probably isn't, there's always the chance of being able to obtain a used one and get it in there and get the system back together. Even if you had to buy a used radio and an amplifier, it's probably not going to break the bank if you find a used one off of eBay or something like that. So kind of keep that in mind. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Let's wrap up the show by going to Gary. Gary, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Before we get off the air, Larry, let me tell you a quick Amsoil success story. But what I'm calling about is back in 2006, my wife and I both had the midlife crisis when it came to cars. I picked a 05 GMC with a Duramax. She picked a Chrysler Crossfire convertible.
All right.
Which we still have both cars.
Okay.
I just reinstalled the convertible back window in it about an hour and a half ago, jumped in it to crank it, and click, click, click. This car will sit for 2 months sometime, jump in it, crank right up, sit for 2 months sometime, jump in it, and battery's dead. So is there a quick way to find out where that voltage drain is?
Not really. Let me tell you what you need to look into. On that vehicle, for it being intermittent, battery draw, there's one thing that comes to mind, and that is what we call the TIPM. And that is the totally integrated power module. And that's the box underneath the hood that actually has your fuses and your relays in it. Now, this is what gets a little crazy here. Inside that box, there is these little tiny micro relays. And what will happen is, and this is as common, I'm telling you, it's the most common thing for a battery draw on a Chrysler that there ever was, especially that vintage. Those TIPMs go bad, and every once in a while, one of them little micro relays that are not serviceable. These are not the ones on the outside of the box. These are ones that are actually soldered into a printed circuit inside that box that will actually cause a battery draw and run the battery down. And they will get to the point where you never know when that car is going to start. So they become, it makes the car very, very undependable. You never know what's going to go on with it. But that totally integrated power control module is what they call it. It's a fuse and relay center with a whole bunch of secret stuff inside of it, I guess is the best way to say it. Now, you would not have a prayer in the world to buy one of them. I doubt very seriously it's probably not been available for several years now. But I will tell you this: there is quite a few companies that you can send those things to, and they will rebuild them and go through them and test everything in it and repair whatever's wrong with them. So kind of keep that in mind. If you can find a brand new one for it, I'd tell you to snag it up. But chances are there's probably not one in the hemisphere brand new. You'll most likely have to wind up dealing with somebody that can actually go through it and rebuild the thing for you. But there's several things that can cause a draw. I'm just telling you what the most prominent is, and that TIPM is most likely going to be your issue. Instrument cluster, alternator, all those types of things can cause a draw. Even an individual component sometimes can. But in this case, public enemy number one would be the totally integrated power module. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. You listeners, customers, and show sponsors, well, you're the reason I do the show and I have a job. You can tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in Central Florida on 107.3 FM, HD Radio, 96.52 FM, and AM 580. Worldwide at WDBO.com, and click Listen Live, or just tell your smart speaker to play WDBO Radio every Saturday at 3 p.m. And if you need help with your vehicle, you can always call Magic Mechanic at 407-629-2661. Visit our website, magicmechanic.com, or you can also email your car questions directly to me, Larry at magicmechanic.com. And don't forget to put in Magic Mechanic YouTube. Check out some of the daggone videos and some of the shows and individual car questions we've taken over the years. And don't forget to subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you back here next Saturday at 3 p.m.